how did our ancestors, who had no knowledge of the underlying power of microscopic bacteria and fungi, harness this phenomenon? It seems the answer is pure serendipity.
We forget that our food's alive. We forget that everything we ever eat has an ecological story. And we forget that most of those stories are totally mysterious.
This is evident in the rise of humanity's fluffy, carby obsession that became the pillar of civilization. Bread. Many scholars believe bread making may go back to Neolithic cooks, with the oldest traces of bread dating back to 14,000 BCE. Prehistoric humans likely made gruel from water and crushed grains, and cooked it on stones by the fire, much like the naan, roti, or tortillas of today. But how did we get from simple flatbread to this fluffy loaf? It all began with a fermented bread we call sourdough.
Historically, all breads that people were eating that weren't flatbreads were sourdough breads. Sourdough bread starts somewhere in the Near East or North Africa. The first sourdough bread we know of for sure is the sourdough bread that we see in Egyptian depictions. When you look at Egyptian drawings, there's a moment when all the bread goes from being like this to suddenly going to being round.
People somehow discovered the art of fermenting flour and water to make a starter.
So when you mix water and flour, there are a bunch of microbes that suddenly get access to everything they need to grow. And those bacteria are what make sourdough bread sour. And so it's kind of this whole ecosystem.
When wheat is planted, it is sure that whatever may be the setbacks, there will soon be bread.
People named their starters, they passed them from grandparent to child to grandchild. Some starters are hundreds of years old. And so there's this great way in which our human stories are embedded in the story of the bread.
Ecologist Dr. Rob Dunn launched a worldwide initiative to examine the mysteries behind humanity's oldest and most revered form of bread. He called it the Sourdough Project.
So I'm an ecologist. Being an ecologist, a lot of my life focuses on the biology of daily life. And recently it's a lot of bread. I want to know the histories. When you make a starter out of water and flour, where are the microbes that are making that ferment coming from? Where did they come from in the Fertile Crescent when breads were first made? And how do we unpack all of that story?
Rob and his team of scientists have collected sourdough samples from bakers around the world. They are sequencing the starter's DNA to unravel the microbial history of each loaf.
So we have 1,000 samples from bakers around the world.
Yeah.
And we've identified which fungi and bacteria are in there in sort of a simple way.
Yeah.
But these are 100 of the most interesting samples. I want to know the histories. I want to pull those apart. But I also want to know, how do we take advantage of the histories and the rules of ecology to make better